I read physical game guides because once upon a time they were very useful. Hey kids, welcome back to the channel. I'm Uncle Frank, hoping that you are having a great day. In today's video, I felt like sitting down, relaxing, and talking about just a general opinion I have. Something that I wish more people did. You see, a very, I don't want to say common occurrence, but frequent enough event is that you go down to your local game store just looking for something to do. And you get there and you find there's two dudes there sitting down playing a card game that you've never seen before. And you're slightly interested. So you ask them what the game is. They tell you what it is. You ask, hey, what's it take to get into this? And they say, oh, just buy a deck. Now, for a lot of people, that's perfectly fine. There's plenty of people who go to their LGS with cash in hand, ready to pick up whatever new game tickles their fancy. However, it's important to remember that, not only does not everybody have 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, $60 on hand to pick up these pre-constructed decks, but even if they do have that money readily available, not everybody is willing to buy into a game just to try it out on the chance that they might like it. And so we come to this opinion of mine, and that is, quite simply, I feel like if you are someone who is interested in getting other people into a game you personally enjoy, then I believe it is in your best interest to always have a spare deck of that card game on hand whenever you're playing at your LGS. Now, there's a few benefits to this that I feel like I should be going over. The big one is just having a spare deck readily available for anybody who might be interested in the game allows them to quickly get a taste of what that game is like. Furthermore, if you are knowledgeable enough about the game and a good enough teacher, and you build that spare deck just right, you can allow them to have a very curated first experience with the game. It's important to remember that in life, first impressions are very important, and the same holds true for your first impression of a game. More than once, I've had people say that they don't like a game, a card game or a board game, just because their first attempt at playing it did not go so well. Either they were given a very bad deck to start with, or the person who was trying to get them into the game was very bad at teaching them, whatever. But, if you are good enough at explaining the core mechanics of that game, and the deck you provide them is interesting enough, I should say, then that can go a long way towards giving them a good first impression of the game that helps them potentially get interested in trying it some more. Furthermore, having spare decks on hand can help the longevity of the game, especially in regards to the tournaments seen at your LGS. More times than I can possibly count, I've seen tournaments just fail to launch because one or two people showed up who would want to play but didn't have a deck on hand. If enough people who are interested in that card game have spare decks, they can just go to these people who might be interested in playing that tournament that night, or are maybe on the fence and just don't have a deck. So their vote is no just because they don't have a deck. Having a spare deck on hand can be the tipping point towards getting that tournament to launch. And I've seen that happen plenty of times, where just having a spare deck or two amongst the players is all it takes to get that extra seat into the tournament and getting that tournament off the ground. But most importantly, in my opinion, is the fact that if you have spare decks on hand whenever somebody might be interested in playing, you are showing potential new players of the selected card game that there is, at the very least, one very passionate player of the card game who is willing to share their experience with others. And for a lot of people, just knowing that there's passionate fans out there who are willing to play the game whenever, that alone can go a very long way towards beginning to foster a strong community at your LGS for a given game. Not just card games, obviously, board games, video games, if your LGS does that. You know, having one or two very passionate fans can go a long way towards fostering a strong community over a period of time. And I feel like a lot of people kind of forget that the cornerstone of most games is a handful of passionate fans who really just want to enjoy their game. Now, I'm not saying that everybody who watches this video should go out and have a spare deck made for every single card game that they're interested in. It's not really what I'm saying. However, if you're interested in spreading around a card game and you're trying to get more people into it, having a spare deck or two can go a long way. For instance, I love the Neopets trading card game. So whenever I am playing it at one of my LGSs, I make sure to always have two decks on hand. You can't really... There's one here and one here. I don't know why I showed the box like that. You can't really see both of them. But yeah, I try to make sure that I always have two spare decks on hand in case there's people who are interested in giving it a try. I always have just the basic starter decks ready to go. And obviously, this doesn't just apply to card games. You can apply it to miniature war games. For instance, if you have the space and money to have an extra army, you could totally do that. I don't think that's as feasible. Building an extra deck is a bit easier to not only store and transport, but cheaper to assemble in my experience. But hey, if you want to build an extra army, you're more than welcome to do that. Be my guest, is what I'm saying. But really, at the end of the day, what I'm trying to really get across, the point of this video, is that trying to be inviting to new players is always a good thing. But just suggesting that they buy a deck or even a box of the game you're interested in just so they can try it isn't always the best call. And having something on hand that can give them a taste of the game you're trying to sell to them, that can go a very long way towards getting them into the game you're trying to sell to them. So just keep that in mind. I know there's plenty of people out there who do have extra decks on hand whenever they're in their game store, but I just wanted to raise awareness of it. It's something that I feel very strongly about. And yeah, I just think it's a good idea from just a player perspective. I know that if I go to a store and there's a new card game there and somebody has a deck and is just willing to let me try it out, I am way more interested in playing that card game than if I go to a store, see a new card game, and someone says, oh yeah, just buy a new deck. I might not be interested in doing that, buddy. Probably just not willing to drop that money. But just trying it out because you have a spare deck, way more interesting to me. And it's not just because I don't want to spend money. After all, I spend money on this nonsense all the time, but maybe I'm not willing to sink money into something that I'll never play again. So it's just something to consider. But that's all I've got for you kids today. If you enjoyed this video, please consider leaving a like, subscribing to the channel, turning on notifications, sharing the video with a friend, leaving a comment down below. Do you have a spare deck? I would love to know. And of course, remember, your uncle is fat and needs to get healthy. So for every like this video gets, I'll be doing a push-up in the next one. I'll see you kids then. My last video got 19 likes. Whew, that's 19.